Good morning.
It was definitely tough for me. Then my journey into journalism didn't start until 10 years after I graduated.
Hello, hello, hello. It's Rene Byrd again for another episode for season 4. And I'm here with a beautiful lady. Her name is Marverine Cole. She is a journalist, a broadcaster, a reporter, an event host, and so much more. We met, I'd say about 3 weeks ago, and we loved one another. We kept felt a connection. And I said, I have to get this lovely lady onto my show. And I'm so excited to introduce you to Marverine. How are you?
Oh, thank you, Renee. I'm good, thanks. How are you? It's good
I'm
to be here.
I am very well. It's so nice. I was saying to my dad, because I talked to him about all my guests that I've got coming up, I'm a little bit intimidated to be talking to a journalist,
Oh,
author. I'm a little
there's no
possessive.
need to be
Oh,
intimidated. Look.
and your accolades are incredible. You're an award-winning journalist, I must add. And across every single station, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pretty sure you recognize her. From Sky News, ITV, Good Morning Britain, that wakes us up in the morning, the BBC Channel 4, BBC Radio. I mean, she's done it all, documentaries, producing. So exciting. So
Thank
I
you.
want you to introduce yourself and tell me a little bit more about yourself. How did this all begin?
Oh, thanks, Renee. It's really good to be here. I don't do podcasts very often, by the way. So you're a
Yes,
you're a very
got
special
you.
person to persuade me.
Thank you.
Um, So gosh, where did it all begin? So I'm from Birmingham. I'm sitting here in my house in Birmingham. Brummie born and bred and proud. Like my mate Alison Hammond, who's also Brummie and proud. When I was a very little girl, I used to watch Sir Trevor MacDonald and Moira Stewart reading the news.
Yes.
And I looked at them and thought, wow, that's really interesting. I love what they're doing. And I was about 7 years old, and it's not often you hear of 7-year-olds watching the news. But in our family, my mum loved being, well versed in what was happening in the world. She would get the local paper through the door every night. She'd read it cover to cover, and then she'd leave it for me and my older brothers to read. And we would always, around tea time, watch the news at 6 o'clock, the local news and the national news. I was never up that often for 10 o'clock, but sometimes I see Sir Trevor at 10 o'clock. So as a family, we consumed the news, we understood what went on in the world, and we would talk about it as a family. So for me, becoming a journalist was just a natural extension of family conversations, but going then to tell people's stories.
Amazing. And your heritage, tell me a little bit about that. Obviously, Birmingham, I know well. My godmother's from there, so I spent a lot of time as a youngster.
Oh,
Yeah.
brilliant.
So our
Yeah,
heart is
Brum
very
Town.
close to Birmingham. But where's your heritage? Where are you from originally? What's your story on that?
So my parents are Jamaican. I don't know much about them, and it's really interesting. It's something I do want to do is look up our heritage. But my mum and dad, both from Jamaica, they came here in the 50s. They're part of the Windrush generation, not on the actual boat itself. They came a little later in the 50s. My dad was a builder, and my mum came and qualified to be a nurse. So my dad was always up and down on building sites working and got promoted to a manager. My mom would work at a cottage hospital, a couple of hospitals in and around Sutton Coldfield and West Brom before having me and my brothers.
Yeah.
So yeah, they worked the socks off. Like which of
Yeah.
our parents and grandparents did not? They worked their socks off. They provided everything for us. Mom pretty much raised me and my brothers single-handedly and did a brilliant job.
Yeah.
And I'll forever thank her for that. But what she always instilled in us, as did our dad, um, education. Get your education. So I was really lucky. Early years of my life, I went to prep school. My brothers were day boarders for a while. And then the boys went to grammar school. I went to a comp that had just changed from a grammar school into a comp. So we had a good foundation. Me and my brother Fritz, we went off to uni and we did the whole traditional thing. It was school, uni, straight into work. There was no such thing as a gap year.
No, I don't know. I
For
haven't.
working class families, where was the gap? What was the gap year? I didn't hear about a gap year until literally I was in my 30s. Like, what is this thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'd always loved the media. And so I did my degree in business studies, but at the back of my mind, I was always like, oh, can I go into journalism? I do want to go into television or radio,
Mm.
not newspapers.
Okay.
And at the time that I was choosing a university course to study, there was no, we're talking about this is the late 80s, everybody. This is how old I am.
She looks amazing.
Very kind.
Gorgeous.
There were no broadcasting journalism courses then. They only started coming on stream early 90s. So I went and did business studies, and I used to kind of tinker around at local radio stations. I would just be polite, write a letter,
Yeah.
because it was before internet. Rene,
I
before the
know.
internet. Yo.
It's
I
true.
mean,
Put a stamp on it and then it goes and then you just
right.
wait.
I had to look up the addresses in the yellow pages
Uh,
for the local radio stations, the TV stations, write my letter,
yes,
send it
then.
off.
Do you understand what she's talking about? Yellow pages, I know it's gone all over your head. This is the generation of people that really grafted and set the foundation for us all. I wanted to state that.
Honestly, it's just crazy. I remember writing tons of letters the year of my 16th birthday to all the local TV and radio stations. I think all bar one offered me work experience. So it was customary to like go make the tea, like answer the phones, like if listeners were calling in, write down the requests, go and pick up if they had live studio guests, you'd go and pick them up from reception, bring them up and give them a cup of tea in the green room. That was my little job for all sorts of different radio stations for free, right? But
Mm.
I did that because I wanted to see what these places were like. I'd listen to lots of radio, I'd watch TV, but what happens behind the scenes? I was so curious.
Mm.
Um, but then my journey into journalism didn't start until 10 years after I graduated.
Really?
Yeah, because I took my degree in business studies, thought, oh, well, don't know about journalism. I'm going to put that on the back burner. I'm going to try and get into advertising
Okay.
because it was marketing and advertising was a element of my degree. Got into advertising, was a trainee advertising exec for McCann Erickson in the Midlands. Did that for about a year and a half, I think. Didn't enjoy it.
Mm.
And I spent the rest of my 20s being a PA to chief execs and managing directors of different industries. I just kind of gathered those skills. I was good at typing. I could type fast. I was a good organizer. I was a good people person. So I'd arrange meetings and flights for my executives around the world and all that sort of stuff and conferences. But always at weekends, I would be listening to the radio, trying to work at a radio station. I did little music shows on different stations in the Midlands. And I was like, oh, got to my 30th birthday and I was thinking, I'm not doing what I should be doing. I really felt like, Rene, that journalism was something I had to do that was like my purpose.
Yes.
It's a strange feeling. It's like an itch
Oh,
you just
drawn
have
to
to scratch.
it's your passion. And no matter
Mm,
say this, ladies and gentlemen, when it's something that you're supposed to do, there's nothing you can't stop thinking about it. It's part
that
of who
was
you
it.
are. Yeah. And you was driven towards that.
Driven towards it. And I remember applying for my postgraduate course at the local university, Birmingham City University. I was stony broke, had no money to pay the fees or anything, but there were bursaries on offer, and I got offered a bursary by ITV News. So I studied my course, and ITV News gave me a 6-month contract as a trainee TV reporter straight after that qualification. So at the grand old age of 32, I qualified to be a journalist.
That's amazing. But you always knew though, didn't you? That was part of who you was. And as I said, no one knows the journey. They see the end result, everyone sees you on the early morning news, good morning, and they don't realize the transition. But what I love about that, the fact that you was in your 30s and you made that plunge, it shows it's never too late to do anything. just shows when the time is right, the doors are ready to be opened, it will just happen.
Absolutely. And I think you have to feel in your heart that it's the decision you need to take, but you also have to bet on yourself. I'm very much a believer in if you don't believe in yourself and your own abilities, who else is going to do that for you? So it was a calculated risk that I took in applying for the course. I applied for the course knowing full well I could not pay for those fees.
But you hedged a bet and it worked out.
Hedged a bit, and then I had to do a second application for the bursary, and I was just like, whatever happens, happens. And it worked out, and it was the best course ever, by the way, surrounded by 20 also wannabe journalists who were hungry. We were hungry, right? And we were loving the learning and all the highs and lows. The lows when the work was really hard, we were all crying, and it's like hours through working hours through the night. And but we all supported each other immensely, and a lot of people who I studied with are all doing different things in the industry. So it's great. It's
And
great to see
that's
us all
that's like the
thriving.
school, isn't it? The school of journalism. And there's nothing more special than being the walk of life that's actually set you up to be the great journalist that you are, the great producer that you are. You're curious, I think. That's what I believe. You have to be curious being a broadcaster and journalist. But also, I always wonder when you're speaking about news, which could be quite impactful, how do you not put your opinion in your responses, or even your facial expression that people go, oh, does she even feel anything about what she's saying? And I always think there's an art to that because I think I might show my face if it's something really emotional. I've got affinity to children or people or just people in a less position than yourselves. How do you manage that? Because that's not easy.
It's actually it sounds really like a dour statement, but it's a requirement by law as a broadcaster, because as part of Ofcom's regulations as broadcasters in news, in particular, news and current affairs has to be fair, balanced, impartial. And that means not only in the report that you might pull together as a reporter, but also in the delivering of that news in a bulletin. So we have to appear dispassionate.
Mm.
Um, although, please know, as you say, if you love children, if you are concerned about the state of our economy, the state of housing that some people are living in, the poor housing and so on, and you hear about tragic cases of murder and people being ill and neglect in hospitals, you hear all of these stories, you are reporting on these stories. It's impossible for anyone not to feel that in their heart and feel sympathy or empathy, but we are just required not to show it. And that was the way that I've been trained, and Ofcom regulations have not changed in that regard. But the news landscape has changed, and there is a lot more in the way of comment and opinion about news stories.
Yeah.
So when you see various news channels and there are longer pieces, there might be where people are just talking around a topic, might be talking about their views, their opinions on a topic, but not necessarily delivering the news bulletin. So when you cross that line of commenting or having an opinion, then yes, you can show your feelings either
Mm.
side of the fence. But for me, I've always worked in reporting the facts, holding power to account, and not putting myself at the heart of the story. But yeah, the lines are blurring a bit now, and there are some changes. And I've made at least one documentary where I've been part of the story to
Yeah.
facilitate more storytelling. Yeah.
Oh, it's funny, I was going to get onto that. You've got some great background in documentaries. Is it Luck Be a Lady tonight? You've involved
Oh yes, that'll be
in
two documentaries then where I was part of the story. I forgot about that one.
what?
Yeah, Lot Be a
Tell
Lady. Yeah.
me about that. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it was about female gambling addicts.
Wow.
Yeah, I was always curious about who else is gambling as I was sitting there enjoying my bingo. And I'd be surrounded by lots of women, maybe kind of over 50.
Mm.
When I was going to bingo hall a lot, I was maybe in my 20s. Yeah, I was in my 20s. But it was lots of married housewives who'd come out in the evening and spend a lot of money on bingo. Uh, And I was also looking for a story to investigate, and just looked at the context of where women gamble more. Is it bingo? Is it online was becoming a lot bigger in terms of gambling on apps and so on. And yeah, I spent too much time. I spent more time than I should have done in the bingo hall. Bought too many cards, had occasional wins, but didn't. I think I've maybe lost more than I won.
Very.
So I was bordering on having an issue myself. So I thought that would be a way of that being a springboard to explore how other women were navigating their problems around gambling as well.
No, it's interesting. I mean, it's a whole big topic, isn't it? Addiction. I think it's the rush of the thrill, isn't it? We're all involved. There's so many different, as you say, everything's now online. Omaze, mention drop a name. Everyone's doing that, and they like
Everyone, yeah,
you
yeah,
possibly buy, win, sorry, is incredible. And it happens, when you look at some of the people that have won, it's like, oh, it feels like it's attainable, isn't it? And the fact it's online and you can use your app, it's easy how you can get drawn down that sorry, they call it the maybe the pit hole, but you can go down that road very easily by mistake because
yeah,
it's that thrill, isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. Do you know what it is? Do you know what it was for me? And I think what it is for a lot of people. When I was in my 20s and working as a secretary, I wasn't earning a great deal of money. Yeah, I was living at home, but I'd built up debts, whatever. So I was like, is this a way for me to pay off my debts? My brain was always thinking, ah, what if I win? I almost thought beyond, what if I win? I've got the money. What am I going to spend the money on?
Yeah.
My brain had already gone like literally 3 or 4 steps ahead. And it makes me wonder whether that's a situation for other people, whether they are doing it because they're in need of more cash. And hey, who isn't in this cost of living crisis? Everyone's under a lot of financial pressure. It makes me wonder whether people are doing that. And then you get more and more addicted by that. I need to win. I need to win. This time I'm going to win. It's going to be this time.
Mm.
I think then you get trapped in that cycle, but your desire to win is paramount.
Yeah, no, it's just a powerful thing, and anyone listening that does have what they deem a gambling addict, please seek help. There's loads of people that can assist you, and it doesn't mean something's wrong with you. It's different processes, different triggers that can trigger people to go down that path. Another one that I saw about your award-winning, I must say, ladies and gentlemen, Black Girls Don't Cry. Talk to me about that. That's one you was heavily involved in. You produced everything. What's that about?
Yeah, absolutely. Black women's experiences of mental illness. It was something that I'd reflected upon myself.
Mm.
Again, at that time when I was under pressure in my 20s with the debt and not earning enough, and I slumped into depression for a short period of time. And it just made me wonder who else is in that situation. At the time I pitched it, which was about 2017, there was a lot of talk on social media, a lot of women just being very honest, a lot of black women being honest about the fact that they're tired, they're exhausted. 2016 was all the events of Ferguson, and Black Lives Matter had come into global acknowledgement, and a lot of black women just saying there's a lot of pressure on us that some people don't recognize. The impact of prejudice and the intersection of our race and gender puts a lot on our shoulders. And so to explore that, I pitched an idea to BBC Radio 4 and spent some time with two ladies who were handling their mental health conditions in different ways. So one lady who had a bipolar condition and had been in and out of hospital, another who'd had suicidal ideation for many years from a young girl and had also had spells in hospital. And it was how they were dealing with their condition and living the best lives they could with it. Um, yeah, it was a very emotional documentary to make, particularly when you're revealing something of yourself that's always been very personal. And yes, I won an award. Yeah, Journalist of the Year at the Mind Media Awards. Yeah,
Amazing. Congratulations. And again, there's so much taboo surrounding mental health. And I'm really proud of a generation that speaks about vulnerability. We're supposed to be bopping around, smiling, and everything's great and grand. But a lot of the time, there's things that we're dealing with, whether it's demons from the past, experiences, just generally how we feel about ourselves as individuals. And, being prominent in the public figure like yourself and myself, there's constant barrage of things on social media that have to say that you have to look perfect. It must be a lot. And knowing that being in front of the camera, putting a bit of weight, because we do, we're women, we've got hormones and all sorts of stuff. What does that look like? A skin breakout. I find there's a lot of pressure on women. And then obviously to put the layer of a female plus being a black woman, there's another layer of pressure. And sometimes you don't know where to escape to it. You have your impression of what you're supposed to be, and sometimes where does that end? It's that acceptance, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or saying
absolutely.
I'm okay, so accept
Yeah,
me. I am, and I find that's really difficult. I struggle with things sometimes, being in the public eye and thinking, am I coming in with my best self? What does that best self look like? So I really hope, listening to the documentary and what you was talking about gives people the encouragement that it's okay to have a bad day. How long to stay in it for.
absolutely. Yeah, you're right. It's okay to have a bad day. It's although embarrassing sometimes to speak up and tell somebody that you're not feeling well. Um, that you have to almost jump over that hurdle of embarrassment because oftentimes it can be the route to you getting the help you need. The context, of course, is that mental health provision in the NHS is not what it should be, and there should be more mental health nurses, and some people are being sent up and down the country for treatment. They're having to wait for months, if not years, for treatment.
Mm.
So that backdrop is not helpful, but there are lots of charities out there, you know, Samaritans, Good Grief Trust is a great umbrella organization that helps you lead you to different places around if you are dealing with grief. Um, just all sorts of organizations that are voluntary that can help you. But ultimately, I think it's really important for family members, friends and family members to look out for one another because sometimes you might be in a place you don't even know how deep of despair you're in,
Yeah.
and you might be unable to speak up and help yourself. So we all need to be mindful of our nearest and dearest, without a doubt. Yeah.
And not to unearth your experiences in the past, but how did you navigate that when you felt that low? How did you? Because I find, I speak as a woman of color, and you are too, that in our community, I come from a very religious background. So I believe in God, I'm a Christian. So anytime I do go through stuff, I pray and I'll sing and whatever. But I find not in my family, but thankfully I have a family that I can talk to, that you find in our community is seen as kind of like, get over it. What are you talking about? But what is mental health in their minds? Some people. Did you find it was easy to have your family to support you, or do you feel that as a Black community, it's not easy to share stuff because vulnerability is not our strongest topic?
It's interesting. I think it's your ability to deal with it may be impacted by whether or not you're brought up in the church. This is my completely unscientific assumption. My side of the family, my brothers, mom and dad, we weren't brought up in the church. So I didn't have faith and prayer in the way that I rely on now. And then you add to that the kind of ethos that Jamaican families had of that generation, which was keep yourself quiet, nobody chat your business outside of this house. Do you know what I mean? Um, and that isn't me saying to my mom she should never have said those things to me, but they were things that were said and you absorb. So in my times of sadness and despair, the last thing I was doing was going to approach my mom to talk about it. Even my best friends at the time, the girlfriends that I would see like every weekend, it was a party with the party girls. We were drinking, we were dancing, we were socializing. I could never tell them that I wasn't feeling myself and that was very low because they would be like, but Marv, you're the strongest girl, you're the party girl. It can't be you. There's nothing wrong with you. So I kept it zipped. That that wasn't the way to deal with it. Um, but that so I realized in the end, I went to see my GP and got prescribed antidepressants. whether that's the right thing, the wrong thing instantly, because there's always talk and accusations of, yeah, GPs hand them out like Smarties. Everyone's got their own experience. For me, it was short term and helped. And I knew I needed that because I was relying too much on alcohol, Rene.
And this is the thing, isn't it? You find vices, you hear these stories of vices, people have sex with multiple people to kind of
Mm.
feel what's going on. Alcohol, I haven't drank for a while, but I know how it makes you feel. You feel good. You get on the dance floor, inhibitions throw out the window. So
Yeah,
thank
but then you feel awful the next day when you
thank
drink
you.
too much. You feel even more depressed. It has a depressive effect, too
Actually
much
does.
alcohol. Yeah, yeah.
And the low is even worse.
Mm,
And then obviously, yes, you spoke about antidepressants, but you have to have a coping mechanism. There's got
mm,
to be something. And I say to everyone, if that is what you're going through, what's the light? There's got to be some light at the end of all of this. So if that is the moment to get you back on track, you have to find a way to get to the light. I always say, what's the light? So the light could be you have somebody that you can confide in, you can really share, and they can help you through this process.
mm,
Or is it wellness? This is a big thing right now. Making sure you take time for yourself, because
mm.
self-love is so incredibly important. You've got your out love, but you've got your self-love. And then with the
Yeah,
self-love, you start dissecting what makes you happy. So with all of these things, if people have to go down that road, and there's nothing wrong with that, there's no criticism, just
no,
word your light. That's what
yeah,
am I right to say that?
absolutely. And what you've just said just makes me think, because at the time that I was depressed and then was able to come out of it, it feels like that coincided with um, me going back to university and
No.
studying journalism. So
Just-
maybe somewhere I
Mm,
was trying to get to a place where I needed to follow my purpose. So I
okay.
needed to be well to follow my purpose.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know. The years coincided anyway. Definitely. Yeah.
It feels very much a correlation. As I said, your light is your purpose, your bliss. I say, and I saw it happen tremendously when we went through a very troubling time in the COVID, and nobody actually realized how they were going to feel in it or out of it. But what I did see was an absolute explosion of people saying, what am I doing with me? What's my purpose in life? And that's that light, isn't it? It's that bliss. And they said, what I was doing before, I'm not doing that anymore, whether it be a relationship, whether it be a new relationship, whether it be traveling, whether it be starting a new business.
Mm,
And something happened from something very traumatic. Some bliss, some light came out of it. Remember we said about that light? So your journey, your
yeah.
light was to do what your heart was telling you and pulsating. And then you was
Totally.
able to then breathe and be free. That's what I
Yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
I,
That totally resonates with me. I think reassessing your life is really important. I think I've learned to do that a lot more as I've gotten older. I
yeah.
think, aging is a privilege, and I've learned so much about myself, and I'm so self-aware. Uh, and sometimes I'll say things to my husband, Austin, like, oh, I know I haven't done right by this person, this friend or this family member. And he'll go, oh, you're being too hard on yourself. And I'm like, no, this is coming from a position of, I know when I look back at
Mm.
things I've done and said or not done, I haven't done enough. Yeah. Uh, and I like the fact that I can kind of keep myself in check around those things. I don't think I've ever been so aware of my body, my mind, what I want, what I don't want, who I am, just who I am. Like, take me or leave me. If you don't like me, that's okay. I don't care. Right?
Absolutely.
Right, but do you
Yeah.
remember what you were like in your 20s? Were you the archetypal people pleaser
Yeah.
who wanted to be loved and liked and fancied by everybody, and you were devastated if it didn't happen? No, nah.
No, I love that. You do when you go through the journey of life and you look back and you do wonder what on earth was I crying in that pillow over that guy. I mean, come on,
Mm-hmm.
what was wrong with you? But as you go through experiences and you learn.
I've kissed a lot of frogs, Renee. I said to my husband knows this. I kissed a lot of frogs before I met my husband, and a lot of them were jokers. Jokers where, yes, I was crying in the pillow. And when you look back now, you're like, why were you wasting your time on that absolute loser?
No. But it's what it is. It's context and it's
Mm,
experience. But it's also that desire, we've all got it, women or men, to be loved. That's it.
Mm. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I was watching was it a little segment of Big Brother? I know it's deviating. And it's Marcia, the lady that's she's a
Oh yeah, Marsha Wallace, the singer.
Marcia Wallace, that's right. And she
Love
spoke
her.
with so much candid and vulnerability
Mm.
about her journey and wanting to be loved and making decisions on her career and wondering if she made a mistake. And I was like, wow,
Yeah.
that's so powerful
Mm.
for her to feel that way. But then I understood it because at your core, everyone needs somebody. That's it. Whatever they may be, whatever their situation is. And that's what we're here for. We're designed to live our purpose and we're
Mm.
designed to be loved and love. And then in between that, we're trying to find out. And I think when you're young, you're a bit more heightened, you know, hormones are more raging.
Yeah, and you're like this. You're like this. Oh, I need to find my partner, my partner, my partner. It's like, come on.
And then when you get older, you're like, oh yeah. And it's so crazy when you're speaking to your girlfriends or younger women. I'm like, it's not going to work because
You
we
know,
know if he's interested, don't we? We know.
instinctively, instinctively,
Yeah.
instinctively.
What
And I didn't marry my husband till I was 40,
I mean,
you
never.
know, so you don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. If you feel in your heart you want a life partner, that soulmate, don't give up hope. Try all the avenues. There are way more avenues now than there ever were with all these apps and
Oh God, like
no, no, I
a
could
new
not
date
do the
every
apps.
day.
I mean, I did online dating. I met my husband through online dating, but it wasn't this, swipe left, swipe right. I don't know what.
There's a whole new
Not for
process.
me.
No,
Not for me, my lord.
it's and also what I'm really excited about, you launched a podcast. So like what I'm doing here, ladies and gentlemen, and it's incredible. It's about the trouble with politics.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yeah.
when we could be here all day. This would
Where
be
do we start?
a
Yeah.
There's so much to unpick as the word when we think about politics, government, you know, people, the challenges, and it's affecting everybody. You can't close your eyes to it. You know, some people who are very comfortable might not feel it as poignantly as we will, but it affects them in every facet. You know, I smile sometimes thinking when there's people when we think of like the EU exit, what did that mean? When you look at people who have businesses, hospitality, it's almost like being like a little domino effect, and everything hits, and then there's no way around it. You know, we've got the war, it's a whole heap. And sometimes I watch the news and I have to kind of detune my brain after and think, okay, that was a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Where's
is.
the baby? When are we going to watch a little teddy bear or an animal that can just bring down that temperature?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
much. It must be interesting. I mean, going back to your podcast, what do you talk about? Is it light-hearted? Is it quite in depth? Is it?
Me being a bit of a journalist who likes to deep dive. I mean, I've never been an investigative journalist, but I like to deep dive. But the one thing I've always wanted to know about politics is how other people are feeling. Um, and there are lots of politics podcasts out there. It's all the rage. It's former cabinet ministers or political reporters or comedians and what have you. I don't know. There probably are other Black British female journalists doing political podcasts out there. Can't get the words out. But I thought I wanted to explore what are people thinking, what are people feeling, because we know the data shows that trust in politicians is at an all-time low, and a lot of people are feeling like they do not know where they're going to vote. They feel politically homeless. They don't know whether they're actually going to get out to the polling station at all because of the tumultuous nature of what's going on in British politics at the moment. There's a lot of bad behaviour amongst some MPs. There are accusations of cronyism. Um, there are accusations of the present government focusing on pledges which really don't
Mm.
sit in tune with people's real needs and desires for their day-to-day lives. So I'm exploring all of that with different communities. So there's an edition coming up about housing and how people in temporary accommodation and who are homeless or who have cladding on their buildings or who have poor conditions in their social housing, how are they being helped? What do they need from the new government? Also, I'll be talking to Black communities British Asian communities about what they think about who they're going to vote for, and what they think about representation. But also, a lot of people think that the current voting system of first past the post doesn't really work. So I'll be looking at electoral reform. Are there any other ways of doing politics which make people feel like their views are at the heart of policy making, from the grassroots? So it's exploring all those sorts of things. It was my idea. I commissioned myself.
I love it.
Yeah, because I know no one. I know Rene. I know no one would commission me to make this podcast, and I wanted to do it, and I wanted to get on and do it.
Mm.
Um, and so I'm doing the best that I can with it. And I've got a special guest coming up this week. Uh, in the new First Minister of Wales, Vaughan Gething, did an interview with him the other week, so that'll be on. And lots of interesting guests along the way.
It sounds amazing. I think as you see, unpicked a lot there. There's a lot going on, and I don't even know where I sit. I don't know. Just as I said, I just feel they're one, being honest, one government, different looks, different.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, the
Really,
one thing I will be encouraging people to do is do your research, because when every party launches their manifesto and makes their pledges as to what they propose to do for the country, we all need to be scrutinising those, and then we all need to be deciding really from our chest where's our vote going, because this year for the general election cannot be a wasted vote.
they can't. And also, I say we might feel this way, but then if we don't vote, then nothing's going to change. That's our power, isn't it? If you think
Yeah.
about the fact we even didn't have the power to vote before anyway, that wasn't even something that we was able to do. So now we do have it. It's imperative that we do something. That vote can count between the 99 versus the 100. So it's hard. I mean, the young people, I think they're going to have a bit of a tough time getting them on board. That's the hard part. There's a generation that we kind of understand. We want certain things to help us, but the young people,
But also, Rene, they've never been taught.
yeah,
Political education is not taught in schools, yet democracy is one of the British values that is meant to be espoused in schools. Yet where's the education for little ones about the importance of what local councils do and what MPs do, and the right, what your vote affords you? Um, People across the world die for a vote. They queue around the block for hours for a vote. So if you don't vote, you can't whinge. Don't come whinging
true.
about politics and the state of things if you are not putting an X in a box.
True. It's true. To make change, you have to be all the things that have been done generationally to change, make change. They've made a stand, and that's what it is, isn't it? As you just said, when you think of the other countries. We're going to talk about just a tiny little sensitive subject, being a woman, but being a Black woman in media.
Whew,
There's a
okay.
lot to unpick, but what was it like? It could have been sailing, no problems, no issues, no nothing. But did you find that there was a difference, or did you find that actually everyone was embracing? How did it feel for you?
It was definitely tougher for me. People look at my credits, broadcast credits, and go, "Hey, Marv, you've done so much and what have you." But that was not without climbing up a very steep hill.
Mm.
And the addition to that was, so being Black, being female, and also, don't laugh, being from Birmingham and not being based in London was a barrier, because then I'd start working in local media. Great. If you want to progress to where a lot of the action was and still is, you need to be in London. So I could only ever work almost part-time in London, and would be paying for hotels, whatever, to stay, to do shifts for Sky News and what have you. So it meant you could only get so far. Um, and also I found that some of the news outlets that I work for, there were people in those organizations who did not want me to be there, and made it very clear that they did not think I was capable of doing the job, that I should be in the building whatsoever. And there are a couple of jobs that I've been in broadcasting where I've been hounded out of organizations because a subset of people have thought that. And I feel it's because of the color of my skin. Because ultimately, if a boss says to you, come and work for this national broadcaster, if the boss, who's had how many years of experience as a leader doing that, that person says to you, come and do the job, you can do the job, right? So
Absolutely.
then another set of people in the organization suddenly feel like, oh, you shouldn't be there. And the groundswell of their voices push you out. There's something wrong. There's something wrong. Um, I see a lot more progress now. I see a lot of change. I see a lot more black women on screen in different roles, not just news, in
Mm.
entertainment, in dramas, and
Warms
that
your heart.
warms my heart and gives me hope that the generation that I taught as young journalists when I was an academic teaching journalism, that generation will have the chance to progress in whatever the industry looks like in the next 10, 20 years. Because
Yeah.
linear television's right, it's all about streaming, it's all about digital content, what have you. The shape of the industry is changing vastly. Whatever it is, I hope there are still many more opportunities for black women.
Yeah, I love that. I think you're right. There is some movement, there is some progress. I spend a lot of time, my other half is American, so I spend a lot of time over there. And obviously there's so much more when you think of numbers, but it's so empowering to watch the news, to see myself, to watch someone washing their hair and it looks like me and a family. So I saw all of that inspiration much more over there, but I'm seeing little by little there is more media, there's more adverts that show that there is black families, there's people doing things, there's collectivity, and lead people are actually in documentaries and lead people are in sitcoms and films. So it's like,
I love it. I
finally.
love it. I mean, who doesn't love Diane Parish in EastEnders? Who doesn't love Alison Hammond, my mate on This Morning, and For the Love of Dogs and Bake Off? Who doesn't love, like, Clara Amfo's just left BBC Radio 1 to go and do some new music content for ITV. Got Charlene, Judy, Brenda, all these incredible women just
So,
out there. What, the Mabusi sisters? This was not what I was watching
what
like
a-
25, 30 years ago. It was, bless her, our beautiful Baroness Floella was there holding up our side of the bargain on Play Score, and children's television. And now, we are flourishing and yeah, long may it continue.
and I love it. We're a multicultural country, so it should be exactly like that.
Mhm.
Bringing in people like ourselves, but also Chinese and Arab, and the list goes on. There's a multifacetedness to our country
Yeah.
which should represent it. But on a really lovely note, you've done so incredible things, from the beginning of your journey to where you are now. And there's lots of people listening and thinking, wow, I want to be like her. And what would you give them as some nuggets of success? 3 or 4 things that really help guide your light.
Gosh. I think whatever part of the industry you want to be in, examine it. Almost take yourself back to school and try and understand what is happening in that industry. And now more than ever, there are lots of different websites that will help you understand what television or film or gaming is about. Look at those websites. Go and join organizations if you can. Like for television, there's something called the RTS Futures, where there are lots of events. Like, immerse yourself in the industry and understand it, because you need to understand it before you can get into it. You need to understand it to figure out where you think your place could be in that industry, right? Um, or, study, just learn, right? Learn and then try and contact build, which is again easy now more than ever before with social media and LinkedIn, which is that business platform for finding contacts and getting to know people. Um, and upskill. Make sure you have digital content skills, because now your worth is as much about what you can say and what you can talk about, but it's also to do with how you can self film or edit with your phone, to produce your own content. I think you've got to be prepared to be self sufficient. As much as you might see television looks great and glamorous, it is very reliant on a certain set of people saying, yes, you can do this, you can make this program, right? Don't have to wait. If you're self sufficient and you've got those skills, go and make it yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've been given some amazing nuggets from a lady that's been in the industry, seen so many facets of it. One of the things that really jumps out as we speak now, we're online, Zoom changed the world, didn't it, for everybody? And it's incredible where it's going and what does it look like. And you have to, whether you like it or not, the older generation find it difficult to have the phone. I remember listening in one day into a phone shop, and they said they don't want answer machine, they don't want this, they don't
Mhm.
want that on the phone. And I was listening to an older generation. I was like, oh, bless them, they have no clue that that doesn't happen anymore.
Yeah,
Uh,
you can't switch it off.
yeah. But what you're saying is you have to literally follow the times and be in sync and enjoy the journey. That's what I got from that, to be curious, to learn, um, and to follow your bliss. I'm so glad that you did. You had that burning desire to be what you are, and now you are an incredible role model for the future. That's what I see.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say, because when you're doing this stuff, you don't feel that. You're just doing
Mm.
your job. You're doing something that you love, but if other people appreciate it too, then that's all the better.
Oh, they absolutely do. And thank you guys for listening. And I can't wait to see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for coming. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.